Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers about their lives in and out of the ring, doing acts of charity work, community service, and helping others. We're all about positivity here on the podcast, and with me today is a very special guest. I'm talking about one of the original stars of Impact Wrestling, Total Nonstop Action. He is a former NWA World Tag Team Champion, former North American Champion. He's wrestled all over the world, and I am very honored and privileged to welcome him to the show. Wildcat Chris Harris. Chris, welcome to Wrestling with Heart.
Wrestling with Heart. Love it, man. Thank you for having me. This should be fun.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So doing some research, you were born in Bremerton, Washington. Tell me about your upbringing.
Well, it's there's a little false advertising there. So I'm from the northern Kentucky, Cincinnati area. That's where my family is. That's actually where I grew up. But my dad was in the Navy, and he was stationed out there on the naval base in Bremerton. So my mom and dad were kind of moving around, traveling around a little bit with the Navy, and that just happened to be my introduction there at the Bremerton Naval Base Hospital. So I wasn't out there long, but it is kind of funny when people know where I'm from, and yet I say I was born in Washington, and their first thing is Washington D.C. I'm like, nope, all the way across the country. So
yeah, West Coast.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Okay. Everybody's got their story about how they got into professional wrestling. You know, a lot of people watch it as kids. Some of them grow up to be professional wrestlers. What's your story? How did you get it into professional wrestling?
Well, mine was pretty common, at least at the time. I was a fan, and I was the kid that got up on Saturday morning, and I was watching wrestling. And while a lot of kids were watching their cartoons, I just got hooked on that Saturday morning wrestling, and there wasn't a whole lot, like this area wasn't huge on wrestling, so we didn't have anything local as far as like a lot of the territories have their local TV. So I watched what was on, and that was WWF, and that was NWA. So I really got hooked on those type of that the larger than life guys, where they just were superheroes to me. And so I was just so excited in that, and just, I was hooked and watched that all the time.
I find it very fascinating because the two products at the time were very different. The WWF was very cartoonish, very, like you said, superhero characters. NWA, you got more raw, gritty style, like the Ric Flairs, the Harley Races. And then the Hulk Hogan's in WWF with Macho Man, Andre the Giant. So it's, the yin and the yang, so to speak.
It was both. And I guess just speaking for me, I enjoyed both. I guess I was more drawn to the WWF, maybe just because of me being in a younger age and, not understanding the business at that point, of course. Mm-hmm. But yeah, anytime I would watch it, you get the heckling from family and friends. That was always my my go-to, is that, when people would see the cartoonish WWF, I would almost try to flip it to the NWA to where they, it's like, well, these guys are really wrestling. And so, yeah, it was kind of a back and forth thing. I really, I enjoyed the glamour of the WWF, and I had my favorites there, my superheroes, but then I was really drawn to the real, the earlier studio, NWA. I was drawn to that too, and the real good wrestling on that. So yeah, I was hooked on both.
Yeah, it's always good, because if you're a fan of both companies, that means you're a true fan, and you're watching, you're watching because you're very passionate about the entertainment aspect of the sport.
Yeah. And,
really
and,
good.
And back then we just watched to enjoy, we weren't critiquing everything that was going on. So
exactly.
Yeah, we just enjoyed it as fans.
Yeah. So, you had mentioned, you really like the superheroes that you were drawn to as far as wrestlers go. So who are some of your favorites to watch?
Growing up, my guy was Randy Savage.
Randy
Um,
Savage.
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people really, they were the Hulkamaniacs, and of course, Hogan was just. It's just amazing to see how he could capture the crowd. Um, but yeah, I wasn't a Hogan or I wasn't a Warrior guy. I was a Savage guy, and I started watching around. I guess I started getting into it more of '86. So I was really following the drama and the storylines, and then my big show, I mean, I started catching up on the Saturday night's main events. And then the big show that really hooked me was WrestleMania 3. And I know that's very common. A lot of people, that's their go-to, but
Yeah.
I was one of those guys, man. I couldn't believe the enormous extravaganza that thing was. And being interested more into the wrestling part of it, I was one of those guys that the Savage Steamboat match,
Mm-hmm.
that just hooked me right there. And I was like, I gotta look into this more.
It's very, that match was so technical, right? A lot of high spots, a lot of good counters, arm drags, and just
Yeah,
just great like work, that I feel like is just missing today, in my opinion.
the
Just
drama was still there because of the story that they had with the taking out Steamboat and his throat and all that, and everybody hated Savage, but yeah, when they got in the ring, man, you got hooked on the wrestling. So you had a little bit of both. You had the drama,
yeah.
but you had the real good wrestling that you could really get into.
What was it about Randy Savage that appealed to you as a fan?
I guess just the character, which is funny because now being in it so long, you find out that that wasn't so much a character as it was really him. But no, just he just drew you in, whether it was his promos or his wrestling. And later years, I wound up taking on some of his mannerisms and moves as well. But yeah, I don't know. That's just what hooked me. And then it wasn't long after that of course he became a babyface. So. I got into it even more because I was young. I was sucked into
Yeah,
that,
sure.
where I got that emotionally invested in that to where and then I started running around saying, well, I liked him back when he was a bad guy, and now everybody loves him. So yeah, it was a lot about him. And of course I love the whole Randy Liz thing. That was always a kind of a side story in itself. So yeah, just he really hooked me, man. And then but later on, as I started getting more into the wrestling, even before I was doing it myself, but I was still involved. Bret Hart was the guy I started watching after that.
Mm-hmm. Bret Hart was really good because he had a lot of technical skills and his promos were just off the chart. I mean, the 97 stuff that he did with the Hart Foundation and his matches with Stone Cold and just
'97 might have been one of his probably his best year.
I agree with that 100%. I mean, top to bottom, just and even before that, like his match with Shawn Michaels in the Iron Man match, just two guys. I feel like Brett and Shawn really transcended the business, and
Definitely,
got
yeah.
people to really take a look at what the art of wrestling could be.
And those guys were showing that because it wasn't so much during those days. It wasn't always the big guy that was getting the focus. The Brett and Shawn proved that on the smaller guys, even though they were still. I mean, hey, they were athletes. They
Yeah,
would still go hard, but they showed that the skill of wrestling also can be at the top of the card.
definitely. So you made your debut in '94, wrestling for various promotions. Tell me about the training process. What was that like?
Well, I mean, I had some old school training, and it wasn't just you just finding somebody at your local training center. I really did some research. There wasn't near as much as there was now. I did some research, and I even tell the kids today that I work with. You don't know how lucky you have it to have it in your backyard because I went to a training center that was 3.5 hours away from where I lived. So number one, what I was going into it with was the dedication because I had to be 100% serious about this and know that if I'm going to do this, I got to be all in. So I found a training center. As I said, I'm around the Cincinnati area. I found one in Marion, Ohio, and that was led by Charlie Fulton, who had some time in WWE. But the reason I chose that is I looked into the credibility of schools, and back then one of the bigger schools was the Monster Factory,
Hmm.
and he came out of that and started his own. So yeah, there was a lot of big names that had come out of that. So yeah, once a week, I would drive 3.5 hours up there. I'd get my butt kicked for 2 to 3 hours, and then the same night I'd drive back and had to be back up for work at 5 in the morning the next day. So it was pretty grueling, and taking the beating that I did, but that's I kind of I'm glad that I had to go through that. I'm glad because I appreciated it even more.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of had to show you some tough love, and I imagine it was very hard.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was in there and I took the abuse like everybody else, but I was really schooled well on the wrestling part of it. As far as reversals and counters and just think the wrestling part of it. But I didn't know at the time that there was a lot that I was not getting, and after about a close to a year doing that, I wound up hooking up with more of a local school that I started working their shows, and I started kind of fine tuning everything I had, and that was with Roger Ruffin. He was a referee for WWF back in the '80s and early '90s, and he was right alongside with the Hebners and uh, um, Yoda,
Hmm.
those guys, Corderas, guys like that. I mean, he
Yeah,
was
yeah.
he was running right with those guys. So he had a lot of experience. And then Roger, what he did with me is he kind of started teaching me the psychology of wrestling, and not only what to do, but why you're doing it and when it is placed the best. And so yeah, he kind of fine tuned me. So I really did learn a lot going into that school as well.
Yeah. What pieces of advice did you get from your trainers?
Oh wow. That's so hard to remember what they would say to me at the time. Um,
Things
I
that
mean,
you kind of took away from it.
yeah, I mean, I was just following their lead. I did, so I trained in '94 and got started at the end of '94, and then '95 came around when I was the training facility that I had in Marion, Ohio. Those guys had a contact with uh, WWF with uh, coming in for like extras and enhancement talent,
Hmm.
that kind of thing. So those guys kind of had the where if it was anywhere local, not just local, I shouldn't say that because we traveled a lot, but they had the end as far as being in for things like that. So I did try that once. I went on one trip with them, and I did get to wrestle a couple matches in '96
Hmm.
with WWF, and of course I got my ass kicked, but it was good experience. But
Yeah.
I really wanted to try to do something with it, and I didn't want to kind of fall into that pattern of getting a reputation like that. So I hit the indies, man. I mean, I hit the indies and hit it hard and try to get as much experience as I could. That's a lot of the advice I give today is get out there and just get as much experience as you can with matches. And I even tell them even a bad experience is still an experience. They're not all going to
Hmm.
be good. So
No, of
yeah,
course.
I just really hit the road, man, and did the indies for a long time.
Yeah, the indies was definitely a hot market in the mid to late 90s, especially with the Attitude Era. I mean, that had to have been incredible. Wrestling was very popular.
Yeah, it was getting it kind of took that little dive in the mid '90s, and but yeah, it was wrestling was hot, and that was when indies were a big thing back then, and so I tried to hit it as much as I could. I mean, um, for not having a full-time schedule, I was my group and we would hit the road on make sure we were on Friday, Saturday, Sundays, and then if we could get a show in the middle of the week or something, so I was even before I made any TV mark. Uh, we were still getting out there and trying to get as much experience as we could.
Yeah.
2, 3, 4 days a week.
It's very cool. And you also had a little bit of time in WCW in the late 90s. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, so in making the connections, I made a connection with Nashville, and Nashville was a pretty good area for wrestling. So I kind of took my uh, picked up my bags and I started going down there and doing a lot of the local around there, and that was with Bert Prentice.
Mhm.
And he was pretty well known promoter in that area, and he had his connections with WCW, specifically Terry Taylor. He was in talent relations at the time, and they started sending groups in. This was like the end of '99, and then 2000 was the year I was really doing things. And of course, we went in. We were doing security. We would do security maybe for Nitro or Thunder, but then on the WCW Saturday night program and then worldwide on Sunday, we would actually have our matches, and it was a little different than just the enhancement. Of course, we were there to put over the superstar, but they were actually making the matches competitive. So I
Yeah.
really got into that. We could show a little bit of what we could do, and I had a number of matches there with WCW, and I guess they liked what they saw because October of that year is when I actually signed a contract.
And I believe that's where you met James Storm too, right?
Well, I met James in Nashville when we were just doing some indies around then. So we were both part of the groups that were being sent in for security. So yes, Storm as well was doing matches, and yeah, we had a bond even then. I mean, we had a good friendship going even then, and even on the indies, we were wrestling against each other a lot. So yeah, we got very tight even before the TNA days.
It's great exposure, for you. Not everybody will know that like some of your favorite, wrestlers got their big break in other companies or got their big break, wrestling as enhancement talent before they made it big. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I may have been beat every time, but I was still getting experience. I mean, when you're in the ring with guys like Booker T and Kurt Hennig and Shane Douglas, and guys like that, you can't do anything but learn from them. And so I just tried to absorb that up as much as I could. And of course, I'm thinking something eventually is gonna happen for me. But of course, I signed the contract in October, and 6 months later, second biggest company that was out there is gone. So that was very disappointing. But it was a learning experience, and I tried to take it and just start plugging away again.
Yeah. Yeah, you did your thing, wrestled for some more indie promotions. And then in 2002, uh another company rises from the ashes. WWE, they bought out WCW and ECW, and in comes Impact Wrestling, aka TNA, Total Nonstop Action. And so in 2002, you were the first ones to join that company. What was it like, getting to work in this upstart promotion?
I think we were all very excited and could not wait to see where it went. And we had a lot of faith in the company. Storm, I think, had known Jeff Jarrett prior, but I had met Jeff in WCW and got to talk to him a little bit then. So Jeff knew of me and Storm, of course, and they came to a show in Nashville, one of Burt Prentice's bigger shows,
Hmm.
and they kind of did a little tryout with a lot of maybe some of the talent, but also the broadcast team, just things like that, getting ready for the first show. And Storm and I actually wrestled each other on that event. And I remember seeing Jeff afterwards, and he said, "We'll be in touch." And so it just made me feel good that Jeff at least had seen it and was happy with what he saw and knew that he wanted to do something with us. So that gave me a little bit of a comfort feeling that, hey, I'm going to be involved somehow.
Yeah, I mean, was it June 18th, 2002 was like the first big TNA show. I mean, who would have
Yeah,
thought that over, 20 years later, it's still going strong.
yeah, it's
Um,
very exciting to
yeah,
still around. It's pretty cool.
yeah. So you had one of the best runs teaming with James Storm as America's Most Wanted. What was it like working with him?
That was great. I always say it was one of those ideas where, you know, especially Jeff, there was so much going on when you're starting up a company like that. He had so much on his plate You obviously need some big names to get the drawing power, the stars. Um, and then I think he brought in some names from WCW as well. But they obviously need their homegrown talent, and I think they looked at us for that. But I think it was hard to find some direction right then. Like I said before, he knew he wanted us. He knew he wanted us to be part of it, but I don't think they knew exactly what to do. So it was kind of wait, let's throw these guys together and see what we get out of that. And it was Storm and I's attitude that we had. We just said, okay, if this is what we've been given, man, let's go with it. Let's make it the best we can. And that was kind of how that was our thought process moving forward. Is that we're going to be a tag team. We're going to be the best tag team there is.
No doubt about that. You held the titles, what, 6 times?
6 times together, yeah.
6 times together.
Yep.
And I believe you held it once with, was it Alex Skipper?
Alex Skipper, yep. He was part of the Triple X team.
That's so amazing.
And then Storms had multiple with other partners, but yeah, AMW had it 6 times, and then I held it one other time with Alex.
Oh man, you guys are one of the most iconic teams there in Impact, and now you also had a singles run too in TNA. Tell me about how that happened.
Well, there was one in 04, and then I had another one in 07. The one in 04, Storm, he had a shoulder injury, and as it happens with a lot of tag teams, they'll tell you when one goes out, the other one kind of is just in limbo right there. They can easily fade out, and I'm so fortunate they didn't let that happen. They started pushing me with the title, and I was having matches obviously with Jeff, but with AJ Styles and with Raven, and Truth was there. So I was kind of being put into the title picture. And Storm was always by my side. It was they never teased dissension where he was upset that I was doing this, and so he was very supportive of this whole thing. But yeah, I went on a great run there and had a couple really good matches with Jeff Jarrett. I even had a title match with AJ when he had the title. But we did the first King of the Mountain off with a 5 of the top. I was thrown into that. So yeah, I felt very good, and what it really did for me was after doing the tag team for a few years, it kind of gave my confidence back that I can still hang as a singles when given that opportunity. So yeah, I was very fortunate at that, but it was also really great to get back doing a tag team thing too.
Did you feel that the transition to singles competition was easier or harder, or?
It wasn't too difficult for me just because most of my coming up was as singles. So my first real big tag team was with America's Most Wanted. So it was more adapting into the tag team style than going back to the singles. But yeah, there's definitely many differences with each. But yeah, I didn't feel like it was too hard. It was I kind of I had to get my mind right and get my mindset more on the singles and especially the talent. Because I was used to working with a lot of the top tag teams we had, but now I was working with the top names in the singles division.
Who are like some of your favorite opponents to work with?
Well, AJ's right up there. He's definitely one of the best I'd ever been in the ring with. I loved working with Jeff. His knowledge that he had and things that I learned from him, and I really appreciate the trust he gave me because he had so much going on that you would think I just need to go in and keep my mouth shut and listen to him. And he had enough trust in me to where, he let me throw out some ideas as well. And he would just kind of put his 2 cents on it that would make it even better. So I loved working with Jeff. I always loved working with Abyss. A lot of people wouldn't know that because they know us as 2 separate, totally different
Joseph
characters.
Park and with the
yeah,
mask
but we actually came up together all those years on the road in the Indies. We were together. We were on the road together all the time. So to be able to get in the ring with him just a little bit because I was on the tag team and he was in singles, but it was kind of cool to get in the ring on a TV show with Abyss. But I loved working with Bobby Roode as well. He was always, I consider him one of the best too, and and then to be able to get in there with Storm and light it up again one more time. So that there was a lot of guys I really enjoyed working with, and I learned a lot from.
I can't believe that like a lot of the guys that you were working with were eventually made it to the WWE and have become successful. Can you believe that how successful guys like AJ and Joe and Bobby Roode have done?
I want to say that it doesn't surprise me. Like to know that AJ is maybe considered one of the best in the world right now does not surprise me because I saw the talent 20 years ago. But the only thing that I was worried about is because I'd seen it done with so many guys, and including myself. You know, when they decided to make that step, that jump there, you know, who knows if we were going to be seeing AJ Styles and let him do what he could really do. And but they, you know, they let AJ come in as AJ, and Bobby Roode came in as Bobby Roode. Samoa Joe was Samoa Joe, you know, and they let those guys kind of really get into their character
Yeah.
and show what they could do. And I think that was very fortunate. You know, I maybe my timing was off because you know, a few years later those guys came in and were really able to show what they could do. So I'd throw Eric Young in there too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm glad he made it. I don't think they really gave him the opportunity to show what he could do. So he kind of fell into that trap. But yeah, I mean, to see where AJ is, yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, let's wanted to touch a little bit about your brief run in WWE. You left TNA and went to WWE in 2008 and had a brief run on the ECW brand as Braden Walker. Tell me about how that came about. What was it like? For that experience that you had.
Well, there was a lot of decisions that a lot of different factors that weighed on that decision to leave because I didn't want to leave, and I don't think they wanted me to leave, but it was just I'll just call it a breakdown in communication. We just didn't communicate enough, and so yeah, that's what I decided to do. I thought maybe I'll take this opportunity and see what I can make out of it. I had all the confidence in the world that I could do something. So yeah, I took that step and got in there, and it just short version is it just wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and I was one of those guys they just decided they weren't going to do a whole lot with, and um, but I don't blame it on the name or the other things that I've heard from other people because going in there, to be honest with you, I kind of looked at it like I knew Wildcat was dead, that it was not going to, they were not going to use that. So it didn't matter what name I would come up with. I still had the confidence that, hey, I'll still make it work. So, but there was just a lot of things working against me. And, maybe I wasn't in the right mindset. I'll take my share of the blame. But yeah, it turned out to be a very, bad experience for me. And, I'm glad I can look back now and be better for it. But at the time it was a really down time in my life. So yeah, that I wish I could say I wish I would have never made that decision, but you live and learn. I mean, it was definitely a learning experience, and at least now I can sit here and say I'm not wondering what if. I tried it and it didn't work out. It's funny because it's been 15 years, but people still remember that. I mean, I had a handful of matches, and people still remember that and remember the name. And yeah, it's crazy to think about. Even I started thinking about just how long it was recently, thinking, wow, it's been 15 years, and people still remember that. But but you know, aside from that, I mean, I'm proud of the work I did, and especially with TNA and even WCW, and I was there at WWE, and it just didn't work out, but that's okay. I mean, I don't try to dwell on that.
Yeah, I mean, you made it. You've made it. You're a living legend. And, outside the ring, you've worked with a lot of charity organizations, done a lot of community service work. Tell me about some of the stuff you've done outside of wrestling.
Well, one of the things I did, it was a local, it was a Christian ministry, and I just got in with a group of guys. It was actually my stepfather was doing it and doing a lot of volunteer work, and it was called Lifeline Ministries. And so I just started going with him, and just not thinking anything of it. It was, maybe a couple hours a day I was going to go help, but they were there to help a lot of people with. They had different sections in their building. Some were for food, some for clothing, um, and then I was more in the department of uh, people would donate furniture, and for those that were in need, we would kind of have our own little. It was a very small warehouse, but um, we have a handful of guys go out on a truck, a couple days a week, and we'd load up some furniture. And for those that needed it, whether it's just a couch, or it could be a refrigerator, could a lot of things. And so we would go and just it was a donation. We didn't there was no exchange of money or anything, and it just really, just the look on some of these people's faces, and it just really meant a lot. And I thought it was going to be a short-term thing, and I just wound up doing that for a number of years, just because I just loved the way it made me feel, and for what we were doing for the community. Um, but I also, like, when I was, that was kind of after my wrestling started winding down. But there were so many times where, one of my proudest things was, we would be on the road, and a group of us would go to like a children's hospital, and go visit, the sick kids. And um, even though we weren't, we may not have been the biggest names in the world, but just for them to see wrestlers coming in, and it kind of reminded me of me being the kid when they were the superheroes to me. And just putting a smile on a kid's face. I always try to go out of my way, like at the shows, if there was a handicap section, or disabilities, or just things like that. Really, a lot of times it would just draw me in to where I could, um, just for one day, put a smile on somebody's face. And yeah, so I really enjoyed that part of the business.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to give back, and it's got to feel good inside for you to be able to, you know, give back and help out in your community. So kudos to you, and kudos to the other wrestlers for going out there and helping people.
Yeah, we did it as a group effort, to go out and do things like that, and take whatever big or small name, whatever name we had, and if you can get some good attention from that, and do some good with it. I give credit to all the guys that do that, from the bottom to the top of the card, to be able to just take time out of your day and make a difference in someone else's life, for being they may look up to you. And there's been people that have gotten a hold of me years later and just told me a story about the difference I made. And of course, I don't remember this certain situation or
Sure.
certain person, but the fact that they would tell me that I had that much of a difference on, maybe their life, or a decision they were making, or something like that, that really stands out to me. And it just makes me, yeah, it does give me a good feeling that I was able to do that for somebody.
Was there a particular fundraiser that you loved the most?
Fundraiser, but nothing really stands out. I mean, the one I spoke of earlier, that Lifeline Ministries, I was really into that. I
Yeah,
don't know if that would be considered fundraiser, but
or just any kind of thing that you've done that really like touched your heart.
yeah, just making a difference, with somebody. And it's the difference that you don't think you're going to make. Sometimes we may have a conversation with somebody. Maybe it's before the crowd's let in, or um, or maybe you're at you're signing autographs or something. There's some downtime. Just spending maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes talking to somebody. You don't realize, because you're just filling up time, but things you say to them can really make a difference on their life, and you don't think about it at the time. But when you hear of it later on, maybe you get a email, or somebody will, you happen to run into somebody, and they'll give you the story about, hey, this is what you did for me, and now I want you to meet my kid. And it's just really cool. And then they'll show me a picture of of me with them when they were a kid, and it's like, okay, they're not making this up. We have met. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's just It's just a really cool feeling, and that's one of my big takeaways from the business. I love wrestling, and I love that I was able to do that and perform and fulfill my dream. But yeah, those extras that you really don't think of when you get into the business, there's some so much more fulfillment to be able to do that. So yeah, that was really cool.
Why are you so passionate about helping out in your community?
It's the feeling you get, I guess. Even just with the wrestling, even if it's you don't have that time to talk to them or make a difference with their problems, we don't realize, because we may do it so many times, whether so many events a week, so many events a month, it just kind of becomes routine for us, and we're thinking more about what part are we playing in the show. But for a lot of these, the fans and especially kids, this is something they may plan for, that whole month for. They may, set that date aside, and maybe they're taking off work for it, or maybe they're skipping out on another event to make this happen so that they can come watch their favorite superstars wrestle, their local wrestling scene or something. So to be able to see that reaction from them, and be able to hug them and take a picture with them, and just knowing that means something to them. It just that's a real good takeaway from that, and then it makes you really appreciate the effect that you have, and maybe uh, uh, not so much weighing in on what part you have in the show, and think about more of what difference you're making in people that are there to watch you. So yeah, it just gives you a good feeling. It makes you want to do more.
Oh, for sure. Hey, Chris, I just want to say thank you for coming on the show. It means a lot to me and the viewers watching this. Where can people find you on social media?
The best way is Twitter. I try to get on my Twitter when I can. It's at AMW Wildcat. I'm still learning the Instagram thing. My wife is helping me out with that, and that is, I don't mess that up. That's at AMW Wildcat Chris Harris. So and she a lot of times she'll check the messages for me and let me know if I need to take a peek at something. So yeah, you can find me on those two ways, and whether it's for bookings, you can get a hold of me that way. There's merchandise that they can find that way. So and then I try to get out there as much as I can. Especially like the convention thing is so big now. So I get out there for that, and just try to do as many appearances as I can, because I still love it.
Well, thank you again, Chris, and you're more than welcome to come back on.
I appreciate it, Stanley, and it's really good that you're focusing on the fundraisers and things like that. So that's really cool. So I appreciate you asking about that.
All right, take care.
This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.